Broken and terrified, she begged, "Please don't hurt me." Then a single dad showed her a different path, the rescue and awakening. The rain fell like a curtain of silver needles across the city streets, washing away the grime of the day, but doing nothing to cleanse the fear that pulsed through Victoria Sterling's veins. Her designer heels, once symbols of her commanding presence in boardrooms across the nation, now scraped uselessly against the slick pavement as she dragged herself deeper into the narrow alley, blood mixed with rainwater streaming from a gash on her forehead where she'd collided with a dumpster in her frantic escape. She couldn't run anymore. Her left leg had given out 3 blocks ago, the knee swelling rapidly after she'd tumbled down a flight of concrete stairs. The expensive silk blouse beneath her jacket clung to her skin, torn and muddied beyond recognition. Her phone was gone, lost somewhere in the chaos. Her purse, her keys, everything that identified her as Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Technologies, was scattered across the city like breadcrumbs leading straight to her destruction. Behind her, she could hear them, heavy footsteps echoing, off brick walls, male voices calling out coordinates. They were close, so terribly close. Her ex-fiancé, Richard Blackwell, had made good on his threats. After she'd discovered his embezzlement scheme and threatened to expose him to the board, he'd turned from charming partner to dangerous predator overnight. She'd been naive to think she could simply walk away with evidence against him. Men like Richard didn't let go of power easily, and they certainly didn't forgive betrayal. Victoria pressed herself against the cold wall, her breathing ragged and desperate. The alley dead-ended into a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. She was trapped. Her trembling fingers fumbled with the laptop bag still miraculously strapped across her chest. Inside were copies of everything: financial records, emails, proof of Richard's crimes. If she could just survive long enough to get them to the authorities, justice might prevail. But right now, survival seemed like a distant dream. A shadow fell across the alley entrance. Then another. 2 figures moved toward her with the confident stride of men who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought they might crack. She tried to stand, to at least face them on her feet, but her injured leg buckled immediately, sending her crashing back down onto the cold, wet ground. "Please," she heard herself whisper, the word torn from somewhere primal and terrified. "Please don't hurt me. I can't walk. I can't." The first man laughed, a sound devoid of humanity or mercy. He cracked his knuckles and kept advancing. Victoria closed her eyes, waiting for the inevitable, when suddenly a child's voice cut through the rain like a small bell. "Daddy, why is that lady crying?" The footsteps stopped. Victoria's eyes flew open to see a little girl standing at the alley entrance, no more than 6 years old, wearing a bright red raincoat covered in white polka dots. Her dark curls were plastered to her round face, and she clutched a stuffed elephant to her chest with one arm, while pointing at Victoria with the other. Behind her stood a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his weathered face showing surprise as he took in the scene before him. "Ruby, stay back," the man said firmly but gently, moving his daughter behind him with one protective arm. Then his eyes locked onto Victoria's attackers, and something shifted in his expression. It wasn't anger exactly, more like a quiet, immovable determination. "You two, walk away now." The larger of the 2 men sneered. "This doesn't concern you, friend. Just keep moving with your kid and nobody gets hurt." "That's where you're wrong," the man said, his voice dropping to a tone that carried absolute certainty. "I'm making it my concern. That woman needs help and you're leaving, right now." There was something about the way he stood, the calm confidence in his voice, that made Victoria's attackers hesitate. The man wasn't particularly muscular, though he was clearly strong from years of physical work. His clothes were simple, worn jeans and a faded jacket, work boots that had seen better days. But there was something in his eyes, a steadiness that suggested he'd faced worse than 2 thugs in an alley and come out the other side. The smaller attacker pulled out his phone. "Richard isn't going to like this." "Then Richard can come find me himself," the stranger replied evenly. "But you two are done here. Go." For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Rain continued to pour down, creating a rhythmic percussion against metal fire escapes. Little Ruby peeked around her father's legs, her wide eyes full of concern for the stranger on the ground. Finally, with muttered curses, the two men backed away, disappearing into the night with promises that this wasn't over. The moment they were gone, the man knelt beside Victoria, his movements careful and unthreatening. "Hey, can you hear me? I'm Owen Matthews. You're safe now." "Can you tell me where you're hurt?" Victoria tried to answer, but all that came out was a sob. The adrenaline that had kept her moving for the past hour drained away all at once, leaving her shaking uncontrollably. Owen quickly shed his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, the warmth of it shocking against her frozen skin. "Ruby, sweetheart, run to Mrs. Chen's store on the corner and ask her to call for help, okay? Tell her it's urgent." "Okay, Daddy." The little girl took off running, her red raincoat disappearing around the corner like a small, determined comet. "I need to get you out of this rain," Owen said gently. "I'm going to pick you up now. Try to relax. I've got you." Before Victoria could protest or even process what was happening, she felt herself being lifted with surprising ease. Owen cradled her against his chest like she weighed nothing, moving quickly but carefully through the alley. The laptop. Victoria managed to gasp, her fingers clutching weakly at the bag. "Can't lose it. Evidence. Everything is." "I've got it," Owen assured her, adjusting his grip so the bag stayed secure across her body. "Just hold on. My apartment is 2 blocks away. We'll get you warm and safe, then figure out the rest." The world became a blur of streetlights and shadows as Owen carried her through back streets, avoiding main roads where Richard's people might still be searching. Ruby reappeared, bouncing alongside them with her elephant tucked safely under one arm. "Mrs. Chen is calling. Is the lady going to be okay, Daddy?" "She will be," Owen promised, and something in his voice made Victoria believe him. Owen's apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building that had seen better decades. The elevator was broken, so he carried Victoria up 3 flights of stairs, without stopping, without complaining, his breathing barely labored. When he finally pushed through the door, Victoria found herself in a space that was modest to the point of sparse, but somehow filled with warmth. The living room was small, with a worn couch that had clearly been well loved, a coffee table covered in Ruby's crayon drawings and shelves lined with books and small toys. The walls were painted a soft yellow, and despite the building's age, everything was meticulously clean. Owen laid Victoria carefully on the couch, propping her injured leg up with cushions. "Ruby, get the first aid kit from the bathroom, please," he said, already moving to turn up the thermostat, "and grab the spare blankets from my closet." "On it." Ruby saluted like a tiny soldier and marched off with serious determination. Victoria watched through blurry eyes as Owen moved efficiently through his home, gathering supplies, filling a basin with warm water, pulling towels from a small linen closet. His movement spoke of someone who'd dealt with emergencies before, someone who knew how to stay calm when others panicked. When he returned and knelt beside her again, his hands were gentle as he began cleaning the wound on her forehead. "This might sting a bit," he warned, and she braced herself. But his touch was so careful, so practiced, that the pain was minimal. "You've got a nasty bump here, but it doesn't look like you'll need stitches. Your knee, though, that's pretty swollen. When's the last time you had something to eat or drink?" Victoria had to think about it. "This morning, maybe. I don't remember." Owen frowned but didn't lecture. Instead, he stood and headed to the kitchen. "Ruby, keep our guest company, okay? I'm making tea." The little girl climbed onto the couch next to Victoria, her dark eyes studying the stranger with open curiosity. "Are you a princess?" she asked seriously. "You have pretty hair like a princess, even though it's all wet and messy right now." Despite everything, Victoria felt her lips twitch with the ghost of a smile. "No, sweetheart, I'm not a princess. Just someone who got into some trouble. Daddy's really good at helping people in trouble," Ruby announced proudly. "He used to be a firefighter, but then Mommy got sick and he had to stay home more to take care of me. Now he fixes things for people, like washing machines and heaters. He can fix anything." Her small face grew sad for a moment. Except Mommy. He couldn't fix her. She went to heaven 2 years ago. Victoria's heart clenched. I'm so sorry, Ruby. The girl shrugged with the strange resilience of childhood. It's okay. Daddy says Mommy watches over us from the stars now, and we have each other, so we're not really alone. She leaned closer conspiratorially. Plus I have Mr. Trunk. She held up the stuffed elephant. He was Mommy's when she was little. Daddy gave him to me, so I'd always have a piece of her. Owen returned carrying a steaming mug that smelled of chamomile and something else. Something soothing Victoria couldn't quite identify. Here, drink this slowly. It'll help with the pain and the shock. As Victoria sipped the tea, warmth spreading through her chest for the first time in hours, she watched Owen tend to her injuries with the same careful attention a master craftsman might give to a delicate piece of art. He wrapped her knee in an ice pack secured with an elastic bandage, checked her other scrapes and bruises, made sure she was comfortable. Ruby chattered happily beside her, filling the space with innocent observations about her day at school, her best friend's new puppy, the drawing she was making for her teacher. Why were those men chasing you? Ruby asked suddenly, her directness startling. Ruby, Owen said gently. That's not polite. But I want to know. Were they bad guys, like in the movies? Victoria set down her mug, her hand still shaking slightly. Yes, sweetheart, they were bad guys. And I have something they want. Information that proves they did bad things. I was trying to get away so I could tell the people who stopped bad guys. Ruby's eyes went wide. You're like a superhero, fighting bad guys. Not much of a superhero, Victoria said with a bitter laugh. I couldn't even run away properly. That's because you got hurt, Ruby said matter-of-factly. Even superheroes get hurt sometimes, but they don't give up. Are you going to give up? The simple question hit Victoria like a physical blow. Was she going to give up? An hour ago, trapped. In that alley with nowhere left to run, she'd been ready to, but now, sitting in this warm apartment with a kind stranger who'd asked for nothing in return, and his daughter who saw potential heroes in broken people, something stirred in her chest. Something that felt dangerously like hope. No. Victoria heard herself say. No, I'm not going to give up. Ruby beamed and threw her small arms around Victoria's shoulders in an unexpected hug. Good, because Daddy and I will help you. Right, Daddy? Owen met Victoria's gaze over his daughter's head, and in his eyes she saw something that made her breath catch. Not pity, not judgment, just quiet acceptance and an unspoken promise that she wasn't alone anymore. Right, Ruby, we'll help. Transformation and choosing home. The first morning in Owen's apartment, Victoria woke to the sound of quiet laughter and the smell of something burning. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was, why her body ached like she'd been hit by a truck, or whose thin blanket was tucked carefully around her shoulders. Then it all came rushing back. The escape, the alley, Owen and Ruby, safety. She sat up slowly, wincing as her injured knee protested. Through the doorway to the small kitchen, she could see Ruby standing on a step stool at the stove, wielding a spatula like a sword, while Owen supervised with barely concealed amusement. Black smoke rose from a pan. Ruby, what did I say about medium heat? But high heat makes it cook faster. It also makes it cook into charcoal, kiddo. Here, let me. Owen smoothly took over, scraping the cremated remains of what might have once been eggs into the trash. How about we try again? Together this time. Ruby giggled, completely unfazed by her cooking disaster. When the pretty lady wakes up, can she have pancakes instead? I'm better at pancakes. We'll see, Owen said diplomatically, which Victoria was learning meant probably not. Why don't you go check if our guest is awake while I start breakfast properly? Ruby hopped down from her stool and bounced into the living room, stopping short when she saw Victoria sitting up. You're awake. Does anything hurt? Daddy says you have to stay off your leg for a few days or it won't heal right. Are you hungry? Daddy makes really good oatmeal, which sounds boring, but he puts cinnamon and brown sugar in it and sometimes berries if we have them. But we don't right now because they're expensive. But maybe next week. "Ruby," Owen called from the kitchen, his voice carrying fond exasperation. "Give her a chance to wake up properly." Victoria found herself smiling despite the circumstances. "Good morning, Ruby. Yes, I'm awake, and yes, I'm hungry, and oatmeal sounds perfect." Over the next few days, Victoria discovered a world entirely removed from everything she'd known. Owen's life operated on a different frequency than the corporate realm she'd inhabited for so long. He woke at 6 every morning, made Ruby breakfast, walked her to school, then headed out to whatever repair job he'd booked for the day. He fixed washing machines, heaters, air conditioners, anything mechanical that people couldn't afford to replace. His rates were lower than any professional company, and Victoria quickly learned he often worked for free if someone was struggling financially. "Doesn't that make it hard to pay your own bills?" she asked one evening, watching him pack his tool bag for the next day's work. Owen shrugged. "Sometimes, but Mrs. Rodriguez in 2B is 83 and on a fixed income. Her heater broke in January. Was I supposed to let her freeze because she couldn't afford parts and labor?" He zipped the bag closed. "Money's important, but it's not the most important thing. People always come first." It was a philosophy so foreign to Victoria's previous existence that she barely knew how to process it. In her world, profit margins and quarterly reports ruled every decision. People were resources to be managed, assets to be leveraged. The idea of putting someone else's needs ahead of your own financial interests simply didn't compute in the corporate playbook she'd lived by for 15 years. But here, in Owen's small apartment where Ruby's artwork covered every available surface and dinner came from whatever was cheapest at the corner market, Victoria began to understand a different kind of wealth. It was in Ruby's unbridled joy when Owen came home and tossed her in the air. It was in the way neighbors knocked on the door, bringing casseroles or asking Owen to look at their leaky faucet, treating him like family rather than hired help. It was in the quiet moments after Ruby went to bed, when Owen would sit on the couch with Victoria, both nursing mugs of tea, talking about nothing and everything. One evening, about a week after her rescue, Victoria's laptop pinged with a notification. She'd been checking it sparingly, afraid that logging into any accounts might allow Richard to track her location. But this message came through an encrypted channel she'd set up years ago for emergencies. It was from her assistant, Jasmine, the only person at Sterling Technologies she truly trusted. "Victoria, they're looking for you everywhere. Richard has spun a story that you had a breakdown and ran off with sensitive company information. The board is prepared to declare you mentally unfit and strip your positions. I've been stalling, but I can't hold them off much longer. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it soon." Victoria stared at the screen, her stomach churning. This was it, the moment of truth. She had two choices. She could come forward with the evidence, face Richard and the board, reclaim her position, and potentially her entire company. Or she could stay hidden, stay safe, stay in this strange, peaceful existence she'd stumbled into. "Bad news?" Owen asked quietly from the kitchen, where he was washing dishes. "I don't know," Victoria answered honestly. "Maybe. My assistant says I need to make a move soon. The longer I wait, the more Richard controls the narrative." Owen dried his hands and came to sit beside her on the couch, careful to maintain a respectful distance even though they'd grown comfortable with each other's company. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," Victoria repeated, surprised to find tears pricking her eyes. "A month ago, I would have charged back in without hesitation. Sterling Technologies is my life's work. I built that company from a small startup to a billion-dollar corporation. It's everything I am." "Is it?" Owen asked, gently. "Or is it everything you were?" The question hung in the air between them. Victoria looked around the modest apartment, at Ruby's crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator, at Owen's work boots drying by the door, at the life these two people had built from love and hard work and nothing resembling corporate success. "I don't know who I am without my company," she admitted quietly. "I think you're finding out," Owen said. "Ruby certainly knows who you are. You're the lady who helps her with homework, even though calculus is way above anything a 6-year-old should be learning. You're the person who taught her that being smart is more important than being perfect. You're the friend who sat with her, Last night when she had a nightmare about losing her elephant and couldn't sleep. Victoria's voice cracked. That's not enough. I need to be more than that. Why? Owen asked simply. The question shouldn't have been difficult to answer. But Victoria found herself speechless. Why did she need to be more? Why wasn't being a positive presence in a child's life, a friend to a good man, enough? When had she started measuring her worth only in market value and stock prices? Before she could formulate an answer, Ruby appeared, in the hallway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Why are you crying? She asked Victoria with a child's directness. I'm just thinking about some hard choices, sweetheart, Victoria said, wiping her eyes quickly. Ruby climbed up on the couch between them, settling in with her elephant tucked under one arm. Daddy says when you have hard choices, you should think about what will make your heart feel full, not what will make your wallet feel full. Because wallets can't hug you back. Owen laughed softly. I don't think I put it exactly that way. Close enough, Ruby said with a shrug. Then she looked up at Victoria with those wide, serious eyes. Your heart doesn't feel full at your old job, does it? That's why you always look so sad when you check your computer. Out of the mouths of babes, Victoria thought. This 6-year-old had seen right through her in a way that no board member or business analyst ever had. No, she admitted. My heart doesn't feel full there. It hasn't for a long time. Then why would you go back? Ruby asked, as if it were the simplest question in the world. That night, after Ruby was asleep and Owen had gone to bed with a quiet good night that somehow felt heavier than usual, Victoria sat alone with her laptop. She pulled up the evidence, files she'd risked everything to save, financial records showing how Richard had systematically embezzled funds through shell companies, emails proving he'd bribed board members and manipulated stock prices, everything needed to take him down and clear her own name. She could do it. She could send these files to the authorities, march back into that boardroom, and reclaim everything that was rightfully hers. She'd be vindicated, victorious, powerful again. But as her finger hovered over the send button, she thought about what that victory would cost. The late nights and early mornings, the constant pressure, the superficial relationships built on leverage and advantage, the emptiness of her penthouse apartment with its designer furniture and million-dollar view, the hollow feeling of success, measured only in numbers and acquisitions. She thought about Ruby's laughter, Owen's quiet strength, the simple joy of making oatmeal together in a cramped kitchen. The way her heart felt lighter here than it had in years, despite the danger, despite the uncertainty. Victoria closed the laptop and sat in the darkness for a long time. When morning came, she knew what she had to do. She just hoped she had the courage to do it. The next morning, Victoria asked Owen if she could borrow his phone. He handed it over without question, simply nodding when she said she needed privacy. She stepped out onto the small balcony where Ruby's collection of sad-looking plants lived in mismatched pots and made the call. Jasmine, it's me. Her assistant's gasp was audible. Victoria, oh my God, are you okay? Where are you? We've been so worried. I'm safe, Victoria interrupted. And I need you to do something for me. I'm sending you files, everything we need. To take down Richard, but I'm not coming back. Silence. Then, what? I'm not coming back to Sterling Technologies, Victoria repeated, her voice stronger than she'd expected. I want you to turn everything over to the SEC and the board. Expose what Richard did. Clear my name. But then I want you to file my formal resignation. Victoria, you can't be serious. This is your company. You built this from nothing. I know, and maybe that's why I need to let it go. Victoria looked through the window at Owen and Ruby making breakfast together, their easy harmony a beautiful kind of chaos. I've spent 15 years building an empire, Jasmine, and it's cost me everything else. My health, my happiness, any chance at a real life. I'm tired of fighting for something that never really made me whole. But what will you do? Jasmine's voice was small, confused. I have no idea, Victoria admitted, and found herself smiling. And that's terrifying. But maybe that's okay. Maybe Not knowing is better than knowing your life is built on a foundation of emptiness and corporate warfare. She could hear Jasmine struggling with this new reality. Finally, her assistant said, "If this is really what you want, I'll make it happen. But Victoria, for what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. You've seemed more alive in this conversation than you have in the 5 years I've worked for you." After she hung up, Victoria sat on the balcony for a while, feeling the morning sun on her face. It wasn't warm exactly, but it was genuine. Real. When she went back inside, Owen was plating scrambled eggs while Ruby chattered about a field trip coming up at school. "Everything okay?" Owen asked, searching her face. "Yeah," Victoria said, surprised to realize it was true. "Everything's okay. I just quit my job." Ruby's eyes went wide. "The one with the bad guys?" "That's the one. Does that mean you're going to stay with us?" Ruby asked hopefully. Victoria looked at Owen, suddenly uncertain. She'd been so focused on making the decision to leave her old life that she hadn't actually considered whether she had a place in this new one. "I don't want to impose. You've already done so much." "You're not imposing," Owen said firmly. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need." Or, he hesitated, a rare show of vulnerability crossing his face. "As long as you want." Something shifted in the air between them. Ruby, with the impeccable timing of children everywhere, announced she needed to brush her teeth and scampered off to the bathroom. Victoria and Owen stood in the kitchen, the morning light streaming through the window, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "I don't have anything to offer you," Victoria said quietly. "My accounts are probably frozen. Richard will make sure I don't get a penny from Sterling Technologies. I'm essentially broke." "Good thing I don't care about that," Owen replied, and there was something in his eyes that made Victoria's breath catch. "You've been different than I expected. I thought you'd be chomping at the bit to get back to your corporate life. But instead you've been," he smiled, "remarkably good at being normal." "Normal," Victoria repeated with a laugh. "I don't think anyone's ever called me that before." "It's a compliment," Owen assured her. "Ruby adores you. You're patient with her, kind. You don't talk down to her. And you wash dishes without being asked, which is honestly above and beyond." They both laughed, and the tension eased slightly. But the awareness remained, humming in the space between them like a live wire. Over the following weeks, Victoria settled into a rhythm she'd never imagined possible. She began helping Owen with his repair business, handling the scheduling and bookkeeping. She tutored Ruby in the evenings, discovering a talent for explaining complex concepts in ways a child could understand. She learned to cook simple meals, to shop for groceries on a budget, to find joy in small victories like successfully negotiating a lower rate on Owen's business insurance. The news of Richard's arrest and the scandal at Sterling Technologies broke about 3 weeks after Victoria had sent the files. Her name was cleared publicly, vindication announced in every major business publication. But she felt strangely detached from it all, as if it had happened to someone else entirely. The board reached out multiple times, begging her to return, offering astronomical compensation packages. Each time, Victoria politely declined. One evening, after a particularly good day where Ruby had aced a math test and Owen had landed a lucrative contract with a small business owner, the three of them were celebrating with ice cream sundaes, made from discount ice cream and whatever toppings they could find in the pantry. Ruby had chocolate syrup on her nose. Owen was laughing at something silly, and Victoria felt a contentment so profound it almost hurt. "I want to tell you something," she said suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Both Owen and Ruby looked at her with matching expressions of curiosity. "I was so lost before I met you two. I thought success meant power and money and proving myself over and over again. But it was just empty, a beautiful, expensive, soul-crushing emptiness." She looked at Ruby. "You taught me that joy can come from crayon drawings and making pancakes badly. That being smart isn't about always having the right answer." Then she turned to Owen. "And you showed me that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about showing up, day after day, for the people you love. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Owen's eyes had grown suspiciously bright. "Victoria, "I'm not finished," she said, her heart pounding. "I don't have my company anymore. I don't have my penthouse or my designer clothes or any of the things I thought defined me. And I've never been happier. Because I have this. I have you two, if you'll have me." Ruby launched herself at Victoria, wrapping sticky, ice-cream-covered arms around her neck. "Of course we'll have you. You're part of our family now." Over Ruby's shoulder, Victoria met Owen's gaze. He stood slowly, crossed the small distance between them, and pulled both Victoria and Ruby into a hug that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. "We'll have you," he said quietly, "for as long as you want to stay." "Forever?" Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Forever works," Owen replied, and when he pulled back to look at her, there was something in his eyes that promised all the tomorrows she'd never dared to imagine. 6 months later, Victoria stood in the community center downtown, addressing a room full of women who wore the same exhausted, frightened look she'd once carried. The Lily House Foundation, named in honor of Owen's late wife and funded by the sale of Victoria's remaining stock options, offered support for women escaping abusive situations. Legal aid, temporary housing, job training, childcare, everything Victoria wished she'd had access to during her darkest moments. "You're not defined by what happened to you," she told the women gathered. "You're defined by what you choose to do next. And choosing to save yourself, to walk away from power or money or anything else that's destroying you. That's not weakness. That's the bravest thing you can do." From the back of the room, Owen stood with Ruby perched on his shoulders, both watching Victoria with matching proud smiles. After the presentation, as people lined up to ask questions or share their stories, Ruby wiggled down and ran to Victoria. "That was amazing," she exclaimed. "You're like a real superhero now." Victoria laughed and ruffled her hair. "I'm just someone trying to help." "That's what superheroes do, silly," Ruby said matter-of-factly. That night, back in what was now officially their apartment, Owen, Ruby, and Victoria were scattered across the living room floor, Ruby in her favorite star-patterned pajamas, working on yet another masterpiece with her ever-present crayons. This one showed 3 stick figures standing in front of a building labeled Lily House in uneven letters. "For the office," Ruby announced, signing it with a flourish. "So people know, we're a team." "We're definitely a team," Victoria agreed, her throat tight with emotion. She watched Owen help Ruby add final touches to the drawing, both of them completely absorbed in the task. This was her life now. Not boardrooms or power lunches or corporate warfare. Just this simple, beautiful, real connection with 2 people who had saved her life by showing her what life could actually be. Owen caught her staring and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "How a year ago I was terrified in an alley, begging not to be hurt," Victoria said honestly. "And how the man who saved me didn't just pull me out of danger. He showed me an entirely different path, one I didn't even know existed." Ruby looked up from her drawing. "Do you like this path better?" Victoria pulled them both close, these 2 people who had become her whole world. "I love this path, sweetheart. I wouldn't change it for anything." Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. But inside this modest apartment where crayon drawings covered the walls and love was measured in small daily kindnesses, Victoria Sterling had finally found what 15 years of corporate success had never given her: a home, a family, and a purpose that mattered. Not because it was profitable or powerful, but because it was real. And sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is choose the real thing over everything else.